Well, Phil Smith got there a year before me, and Jerome Ashby got there 3 months before me. Phil Myers got there 3 months after me. So there were four of us who were pretty new within a year or two.
Almost the same time.
Things were beginning to change, and then 6 years later, Joe Alessi came and Dave Finlayson came. So the trombone section changed a lot because two out of the four people were new. So by 1986, we had a lot of young energy, in that section. Avery Fisher Hall, which was the hall I played in, was just awful acoustically, terrible. And it was terrible for bass. For bass response, it was just horrible. For trebles, it was very crisp and clear and quick, and it responded really quickly. But there was never a warm sound in that hall. You just couldn't get it. Just turned everything there. It just that sound was just virtually impossible to make in that hall. And so it influenced a lot of equipment that we played because of the acoustic situation we found ourselves in. The funny thing about that hall is when I got there, that horn was big enough to get me the job. But the rest of the brass section hated that horn. They just hated it. There wasn't enough center in that for them to hear what they wanted to hear. So the end of the first year of my time in the orchestra, we took a European tour. That he had bought from Jacobs. It belonged to Fred Geib. And I think it was one of a very few rotary valve tubas. He had a couple of lead pipes. He had some interchangeable lead pipes. He had, and one of the lead pipes he had was an Alexander F tuba lead pipe, bent so that it could fit. I thought, there's some things I really like about this tuba. So I bought it, and he shipped it to the Paris airport. And Paris was our next to the last stop on the tour. So I spent all day at the Paris airport trying to find this tuba, and I finally found it, and brought it home. And I decided let's just play it that night. And Zuba knew, and so the intonation of this thing. So hang on to your hat, And after, I just looked down at my colleagues like, and I remember Phil Smith looking down like that. Yes, that. Myers, the same, that. And Zubin, I looked up and Zubin's going, yeah, at the end of the concert, like, yeah, you keep that horn, So, but it was a smaller tuba. I wanted more body out of it. Without losing the clarity. And the other thing that horn had was a depth of sound. And they liked it, plus the center. And so, I wanted to keep the depth. I wanted to keep the center, but I wanted more body. So I made an even bigger lead pipe, and eventually, I ended up getting like 5 Alexander valves, big rotary valves, and I made a new valve section that was interchangeable. I made it so that I could put one on and put a smaller one on and a bigger one on, and I like the bigger one a lot, and everybody else did too, and it kept the center, it kept the depth, it just added a little more breadth to the sound. And again, it was these conditions, in a terrible acoustic condition, in a section that just put out tons of sound. And so you're just, you just try and find your way into something that works in the situation you find yourself in.
Okay. So, okay.
Four or five of them. They didn't make very many of them. And I thought, well, let's start with that because they have the bell, they have bottom bow, they have all this stuff. One of the things, more depth. I was grasping at straws. I didn't know whether it would work or not, and so. They sent one, and they drew up this. I drew a branch, just a third branch, and just sent it. Can you make this? Because I could solder it on. I just couldn't make the branch and bend it. So.
Well,
So-
what do you mean by the branch? The
A U shape.
Oh, okay, got it.
thing. You got the bell, and then you have a bottom bow, and then
Yeah.
the first U shaped thing is the top. That's called the first branch.
Okay.
The next one's called the second branch,
Mhm.
and then it used to have a third branch and a fourth branch and a fifth branch. It used to have 5 branches.
Yeah.
And I made it have 3. And I really like the sound of this thing. It just, it made a sound that no other instrument made, and I thought, okay, let's see if I can go with this.
So you
Yeah, and try and hold the sound together in a hall that just didn't like bass frequencies.
I see.
Yeah, and for that, I was just sort of looking for all around tuba for maybe a college person to, it's small enough to play in a brass quintet if they wanted to, or big enough to play in a college orchestra. And I used to take it in for like Brahms second, something that's like a little lighter. I don't want this, so yeah. And that horn we started from just a bell. That we made new bottom bow, new branches. That was just a from scratch
あ
horn.
のマイク・リンチ。
My
マイク・リンチさんっていうチューバのコレクター、もともとパテント商標権とかのやられる弁護士さんで、チューバを吹かれる方で、チューバのコレクターをされてるらしいんですけども、その人のところに今あるらしいんです。はい、で去年クリス・オルカさんがそこの場所に行かれて吹いてるのを写真撮ってワーレン先生に送ってきたらしいですよ。
じゃあるんだね、あれは。
まだあるみたいです。
なるほど。
はい。
in original shape. Let's see if
There
it focuses in.
Wow.
So
It's really tiny
yeah,
compared to like what we play today.
yeah, it is.
あ
And the fifth valve you worked on your left hand, and it worked. It had a mechanism that went to the very bottom, and the fifth valve was a 1 and 3, and the fourth valve was a 2 and 3. It's like the old Sanders B flat tubas. So
Wait,
so
wait,
fourth valve on that horn was 2 and 3, and fifth valve on that horn was 1 and 3.
ー
Okay. Wow. That's really confusing.
うん。
It was for me too. So I didn't, when I first got that tuba, I didn't use this very much. I just played it kind of like a bass and tuba.
Okay, I see. Okay. So, wow, that's so confusing. Wow. Okay.